There are so many ways of walking the journey of healthy emotional release. Healthy emotional release. There are so many ways, so many paths, so many journeys and layers to that for every single being out there. And yet, for everyone, there's a moment on that path that we start feeling like, am I doing this right? There can be some, self questioning and self doubt that arises along the way. Like, is this really the way? I'm starting to feel more angry than how I used to feel, especially if you're a person who's never experienced your anger before. Once you start walking that path of emotional release, then you actually feel angry now. And that didn't happen before. And so, is that right? Is that supposed to happen? And if you have been feeling it before, like, there's so many ways of judging this. And yet there are certain milestones, there's certain areas that we all walk through in some way, shape, or form at some time along that path, depending on what our experience of life is. For me personally, I walked through really being stuck in my head, rationalizing everything. I didn't even know that I was angry, that I would literally have a confused resistance to when my family or when anyone else would say that I'm angry, because I really didn't recognize it, and I really didn't connect it because I understood it so much. I understood all of the nuances of my childhood and what was happening and why things were happening, and I could give it a place. And yet still, through giving it that place, I I wasn't able to understand the anger until much later on. And so I was kind of oscillating between living disconnected from it to sometimes needing support and needing to be held the way that I held others. And it wasn't being returned. And so it would feel very unfair. It would feel so unfair on why is this happening to me? Why am I able to hold space for others and I'm not able to get that back? Am why? Like, this is unfair. This is an unfair situation. And sometimes I would find myself in that victim role in my childhood, which moved into my adult life. But most of the time I lived in this, like, I understand. And when I started to understand that dynamic and that I needed more, there was more space for me. And so I needed to take space in that. Then I started to be able to feel it. And when I went to start sharing, I was so used to describing everything as facts, like I was a journalist talking about some other third person's life, which I was disconnected to. And when I started trying to blend and talk about my feelings on top of that, I would feel so ice cold inside. And I've expressed this before in other podcasts, but I would feel this my core would feel like ice, that I would start to shake. I would have a full blown trauma fear response to sharing how I felt about the same words that I could, you know, just flow out of my mouth. And when I started getting used to being able to have that space held for me and holding that for myself, giving myself permission that I'm allowed to take that space and asking for what I need in that moment, because I needed so much presence to be held in that moment, I asked for it and it started building. And I went on a scale from not being able to express to having, like, uncontrollable rage erupt inside of me at certain moments of my life, when I started learning to deal with my anger and I didn't really know how to handle all of that rage, all of those boundaries that I had allowed to be crossed, but learned that that was the way that I should be, then all of that anger started moving inside of me. Like I opened the door and it started moving. And that's what happens for so many people. And it does stop. It's about learning to be with that and starting to release the energy behind it, the charge that lives behind it, so that you can gain clarity about what your boundaries are and what it is that's triggering you. And so I started learning how to allow all of that energy to move through my body without having to connect to the story of it or have to spiral into the head game of it all, into the noise of it all. So I could transmute that energy into something else. And that's what I want to share with you here. I want to be able to share that while you're on that journey, some information, some tips, some guidelines for you to be able to support yourself in healthy release of your anger, of your emotions. Now, when it comes to anger or any emotion, it is your anger. And so when you are learning how to deal with your emotions, especially your anger, withhold yourself from projecting it on another. Stop yourself, because the tendency and the urge, the literal energetic release, makes you want to spit fire. It turns you into that dragon, the lion's roar that wants to erupt inside of you and be projected through the story of whatever it is that's triggering you or whoever is triggering you. And so when we do that, we amplify the frequency of that energy. So it's not healing for you, and it's definitely not helpful or healing for the person that you're projecting it on, because it's not their anger. It is not their responsibility to take care of. When you pull that responsibility back and learn to diffuse using release tools and the practices and tools that I share in my courses and masterclasses and sessions, then you diffuse to bring the clarity. And we don't give our anger away. We don't give our responsibility away. We pull it back and we bring it into the body so that we can start feeling and slowing down to listen to the signals that the body gives you way before you get into rage, way before you get, cross your boundaries. You get to the edge of your boundaries. So slowing down to learn how to feel, but never projecting it towards anyone else, because you're amplifying the energy and you're distorting it for yourself. And you're causing unnecessary hurt for yourself and for those that you're projecting it on. Now, when you do vent, don't do it to justify or to validate yourself. Do it to release the energy that is inside. So it's not about being right here. It is really about releasing the charge behind the anger, the charge behind the emotion. And that charge, once you take that away, it's like a discerning energy to tell you where your lines are so that you can start listening to it in a deeper way, in a clearer way, without all of the excess noise that lives behind it. And the part of you that wants to erupt and push it outside towards someone. And like always, when you start doing that, recognize the sensations in your body. Recognize where it lives inside of your body. Start following them. I guarantee that one of the most magical tools that you can use when you are feeling in rage, in anger, like heated, is to stop, to be with yourself, with that frustration, with that rage, and feel in and follow the sensations in your body. That's literally it. Follow the sensations in your body without the story, without the interpretation. And again, I will say that the interpretation means like I'm angry in my belly or my chest, and I'm angry in my throat. Everything's tight. Like, yes, everything's tight, everything's contracted. Those are the sensations. It's not the I am angry in. Let go of the labels, let go of trying to interpret what the story is behind it or what it is specifically that is triggering you, and come back to your body, come back to what the sensations are, and follow it around. Follow it from your toes, the soles of your feet, to the crown of your head. And since emotions are energy, try to keep that in the energetic sensations realm. So acknowledge it, respond to it, release it using all of the tools and practices that I've offered. And when you feel that the charge has lessened, when you feel that you are more centered, from that neutral place, you can set your boundaries. So, not while you're diffusing, not while you are in the rage itself, but once you have taken care of yourself, once you have released the emotions that you need to release, then you have all the space to be able to go, okay, this is not okay, or that is okay, or this is my yes and this is my no. And for those that are important to you, you can share those boundaries. And I'm sure you can imagine that there's a huge difference between sharing from a very